The boy slammed his palm against his ear and screamed without sound, his mouth wide, eyes burning, knees folding as he collapsed onto the cold marble floor. Naomi froze with the mop still dripping in her hands. She watched the child curl into himself, shaking, pressing harder as if he could crush the pain out of his head. She dropped the mop and ran. Eli Rowan had learned how to cry silently. It was the only kind of crying allowed in the Rowan estate. Naomi slid beside him, her heart pounding. She didn't touch him at first. She'd been warned. Everyone had. But when Eli's breath began to hitch, when his small fingers clawed at his ear like he was trying to pull something evil out of himself, Naomi broke the rule without thinking. She gently wrapped her arms around him. "It's okay," she whispered, even though she knew he couldn't hear her. "I'm here. I won't go." Eli trembled, then slowly leaned into her chest. His breathing steadied, but his hand never left his ear. From the top of the staircase, Mrs. Calder watched with narrowed eyes. That night, Marcus Rowan stood alone in his study, staring at a wall of medical reports he had stopped reading years ago. He loosened his tie, poured a drink, and didn't touch it. The house was silent, the way it had been for 8 years. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that pressed against his chest until breathing felt like work. 8 years ago, the silence had arrived with blood on white sheets and a doctor who wouldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rowan," the man had said. "Your wife didn't make it." Marcus had nodded like a machine. Then the doctor had kept talking, words tumbling out, trying to fill the space. "And your son, there's something else." That was the day Marcus learned that grief could stack. One tragedy sitting on top of another until a man either collapsed or went numb. Marcus chose numb. He had spent millions trying to undo that day. Boston first, then Zurich, then Singapore. Specialists with perfect smiles and expensive shoes. They all said the same thing. Congenital. Permanent. I am sorry. One had hesitated once, tapping a scan. "There's a shadow here, but it's likely nothing." Marcus had latched onto that word. Shadow. He paid more money, asked more questions. The shadow disappeared under reassurances and invoices. Eventually, Marcus stopped asking. He built the estate in Briarwood not as a home, but as a fortress against hope. No music, no television, no surprises. If nothing entered, nothing could be taken away again. Eli grew inside that silence like a plant without sunlight. Naomi didn't know any of this when she took the job. She only knew her grandfather's nursing home bill was overdue and the landlord had stopped answering her calls politely. She had scrubbed floors before. She could scrub floors again. Mrs. Calder had explained the rules on her first day without looking at her face. You clean what you're assigned. You do not wander. You do not speak unless spoken to. And you do not interact with the child. Naomi had nodded. She needed the job too badly to ask why. She learned quickly. The staff moved like ghosts. No one laughed. No one lingered. Doors closed softly. Shoes were rubber-soled to avoid sound. Even the grandfather clock in the hall had been wrapped with padding, so its chime barely breathed. Eli spent most of his time alone. Naomi noticed him because he was always still, always arranging things into precise lines. Toy cars, books, pencils. Disorder seemed to hurt him more than silence. And always his hand drifted to his left ear. Naomi began to time it. Every few minutes a wince, a rub, sometimes a sharp flinch, like something had stabbed him from the inside. She tried not to look. Looking felt like caring. Caring felt dangerous. But one afternoon, she found him sitting on the floor with a broken wooden boat in his lap. One wool missing. A useless thing. She knelt, held up the loose piece she'd found under the sofa, and raised her eyebrows. Eli started, then slowly nodded. They worked in silence. When she fixed it, his face changed. Not a smile exactly. More like relief. Like someone had loosened something tight inside him. He pressed 2 fingers to his chest, then pointed at her. Naomi understood without words. "You're welcome," she mouthed. From that day, he watched for her. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. They drew pictures, invented signs. Naomi tapped her chest twice for safe. Eli copied her. Eli touched his ear and grimaced for hurt. Naomi nodded, her throat tight. Mrs. Calder noticed. She cornered Naomi in the laundry room. "You're getting attached," she said flatly. "I'm just cleaning," Naomi replied. Mrs. Calder stepped closer. "People who get attached don't last here." That evening, Eli's pain returned with a vengeance. He pressed his ear so hard his knuckles went white. Tears streamed down his face. Naomi hesitated only a second. She leaned in and gently tilted his head. And that was when she saw it. Deep inside his ear, past where she thought anything could be seen, was something dark. Not shadow, not skin. Something solid. Something that didn't belong. Naomi's breath caught. Eli looked at her, terrified, searching her face. Naomi swallowed. She touched her chest twice. Safe. But safety had rules here, and Naomi felt them closing in. Footsteps echoed somewhere above. Voices murmured. The house seemed to hold its breath. She pulled back, heart racing, and forced a calm smile for Eli, though fear crawled up her spine. Whatever was inside his ear had been there a long time. Long enough for doctors to miss it. Long enough to hurt him daily. Naomi straightened, already knowing this was no accident, and that seeing it had changed everything forever. She could not unsee it. Naomi barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dark shape lodged inside Eli's ear, saw his fingers digging at himself like he was trapped underwater. She kept hearing Mrs. Calder's voice. "People who get attached don't last here." Naomi stared at the ceiling of her small room and whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken in years. "Please don't let me be wrong." The next morning, Eli didn't come down for breakfast. Naomi found him curled beneath the staircase, rocking slightly. When he saw her, relief flooded his face, then pain twisted it again. He pointed to his ear and shook his head hard. "No doctors. No more." "I know," Naomi whispered. "I know you're scared." She held up a notebook and drew a simple picture. A hand helping another hand. Then she drew a question mark. Eli studied it, then looked at her eyes. His lower lip trembled. Slowly, he nodded once. Naomi's chest tightened. Agreement felt like permission, and permission felt like crossing a line she could never step back over. She spent the morning moving through her chores like a ghost, counting steps, thinking through every possibility. If she told Marcus Rowan, security would intervene. If she told Mrs. Calder, she would be fired before finishing the sentence. If she did nothing, Eli would keep suffering. She remembered her brother, 6 years old, a fever that went untreated because the clinic was closed. By the time help came, it was too late. People had said, "You should have waited." Naomi had learned what waiting cost. By afternoon, the house emptied. Marcus had left for the city. Mrs. Calder took half the staff with her to inspect another property. Naomi felt the silence thicken, as if the house itself knew what she was about to do. She cleaned her hands carefully, sterilized the small tweezers she used for delicate fixtures. Her hand shook so badly she had to sit down. "Look at me," she whispered to Eli, though she knew it was habit more than help. He did. She touched her chest twice. Safe. He copied her, though fear filled his eyes. Naomi worked slowly, carefully, murmuring words that were more for herself than him. "Easy, easy. I got you." The obstruction resisted at first, stubborn, as if it had claimed that space as its home. Eli whimpered, his fingers digging into her sleeve. Naomi's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could feel it. Then it gave way. Something dark and hardened slid free into the light. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Eli gasped. It wasn't silent. Naomi froze. Ili imbrotse. His eyes widened. He sucked in another breath, sharp and startled, and clapped his hands over his mouth. His gaze darted around the hall, landing on the grandfather clock. It chimed once, faint but present. Ili sothvith. Sound tore out of him in broken pieces, raw and untrained. Nah. Naomi dropped the tweezers. Tears blurred her vision. "Eli," she whispered. "It's okay. You're okay." Footsteps thundered. Marcus Rowan skidded into the hall, breathless, eyes wild. "What's happening?" "I heard." Eli turned. "Papa." The word cracked something open inside Marcus. He staggered forward like he'd been struck. "Ili." Naomi stood, blood on her gloves, terror blooming too late. Security poured in behind Marcus. What did you do? Marcus demanded, his voice shaking with rage and fear. Get her out. Now. No. Eli shouted, his voice loud, clear, desperate. Please, don't take her. The guards hesitated. Marcus stared at his son, at the way his chest rose and fell, at the sound that had never existed before. His knees buckled. He sank to the floor. At the hospital, doctors rushed Eli through tests. Naomi sat alone in a white room, hands clenched, replaying everything. She was ready for handcuffs, ready to lose everything. Marcus paced the corridor like a caged animal. Finally, a doctor approached, pale and tight-lipped. Mr. Rowan, we reviewed your son's previous scans. Marcus stopped, and there was a notation. 3 years ago, a dense obstruction. It should have been addressed immediately. Marcus's vision tunneled. Why wasn't it? The doctor swallowed. I can't answer that. Marcus laughed, a broken sound. He turned away, shoulders shaking. He found Naomi later, sitting with her head bowed. I trusted them, he said hoarsely. I trusted money, titles, buildings full of degrees. Naomi looked up, tears streaking her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I saw him hurting. Marcus closed his eyes. You saw what I refused to. They entered Eli's room together. Music played softly. Eli smiled, wide and unafraid. He reached for Naomi's hand. Stay, he said. Marcus nodded. She's not going anywhere. The silence that had ruled the Rowan estate was gone forever. Marcus stayed at the hospital that night, sitting upright in the chair beside Eli's bed, afraid that if he closed his eyes the sound would disappear again. Every breath his son took felt like proof. Proof that the world had shifted. Proof that something sacred had been returned after years of theft. Eli slept lightly, fingers twitching, startled awake by noises most children would ignore. A nurse's shoes squeaked, and Eli flinched, then laughed, a sound too big for his small body. Marcus laughed with him, and then cried without trying to stop himself. Naomi sat in a separate room down the hall, wrapped in a thin blanket, staring at the floor. No one had arrested her. No one had thanked her either. She replayed the moment again and again, the resistance, the release, the sound. She wondered if courage always felt this much like fear afterward. Near dawn, Marcus stood in the doorway. You should go home, Naomi said quietly. You've been here all night. I don't think I could sleep if I tried, he replied. He hesitated, then added, neither could you. She nodded. He sat across from her, the billionaire and the cleaner. No desk between them, no staff, just two people stripped bare by the same moment. They told me it was permanent, Marcus said. They told me to accept it. Naomi folded her hands. Sometimes people say that when fixing something would take too much effort. Marcus swallowed, or when the problem makes them uncomfortable. Silence settled, different from before. Not heavy, honest. I fired Mrs. Calder, Marcus said suddenly. Naomi's head snapped up. You didn't have to. I did, he interrupted. She protected rules instead of child. Naomi thought of the warning looks, the fear disguised as authority. She felt no triumph, only sadness. Later that morning, Eli woke fully. The doctor explained, sounds slowly. Paper crinkling, machines humming. Eli listened with awe, like someone discovering a new color. Can I hear the house? Eli asked. Marcus smiled. Soon, when they returned to the estate, it felt smaller, less intimidating. Naomi noticed it first. The walls hadn't changed, but something had loosened. Eli walked through the halls, touching everything. Tapping wood, knocking lightly, laughing at echoes. It talks back, he said, delighted. Marcus watched him like a man seeing his son for the first time. Naomi stood near the door, unsure if she belonged anymore. Marcus turned to her. I want you to stay. She blinked. As cleaning staff? As family, he said, then corrected himself. As someone Eli trusts. Tears filled her eyes. I don't want special treatment. I want the right treatment, Marcus said. For all of us. Days passed. Music returned to the house in careful increments. Soft at first, then louder. Eli learned words the way starving people eat, hungrily, joyfully. Sometimes he grew overwhelmed and covered his ears. Naomi sat with him during those moments, grounding him. One afternoon, Marcus found Naomi in the kitchen, staring at a stack of unopened mail. "My grandfather's bills," she admitted when he asked. "I was afraid to look." Marcus picked up the envelope and handed it back. "You don't have to be afraid anymore." She shook her head. "I don't want charity." "It isn't charity," he said. "It's gratitude." She studied his face, searching for pity. She found none. That night, Eli knocked on Naomi's door. "I had a bad dream," he said. She knelt. "Do you want me to sit with you?" He nodded. "Can you tell me a story?" Out loud. She smiled. "I can try." As she spoke, Eli listened not just to the words, but to the rhythm, to the comfort hidden inside sound. He fell asleep halfway through. Marcus watched from the hall, unseen, hand pressed to his mouth. Weeks later, reporters called. Doctors apologized. Lawsuits were suggested. Marcus declined them all. "What matters is that my son hears," he said simply. The estate filled with new sounds. Whined through open windows. Footsteps that didn't hide. Laughter that stayed. One evening, Eli pressed his ear to Marcus's chest. "What is that?" he asked. Marcus's voice broke. "That's my heart." Eli smiled. "It's loud." Naomi watched them from across the room, understanding finally that miracles didn't arrive like lightning. They arrived like people who refused to look away. And somewhere deep in the quiet that had once ruled the house, fear loosened its grip, making room for something stronger, something braver, something that sounded a lot like hope. Marcus woke to sound again, not the jolt of panic that used to grip him, but the soft rhythm of morning. Birds argued outside the window. Somewhere down the hall, Eli laughed, a clean burst that still startled Marcus every time. He sat up, breathing slowly, listening until the sound settled into something real. It was not leaving. In the kitchen, Naomi stood at the counter, hands wrapped around a mug she kept forgetting to drink. She heard Eli's footsteps before she saw him. He ran in, skidding slightly, and stopped when he noticed her. "You're still here," he said, as if the idea needed confirmation. "I told you," Naomi said gently. "I'm not going anywhere." Eli smiled, then winced as a blender roared to life across the room. He covered his ears and laughed at the same time, overwhelmed and amazed. Naomi moved instinctively, lowering the noise. "Too much?" she asked. He nodded. "But it's kind of cool." Marcus watched from the doorway. He saw something he had missed for years, not in Eli, but in himself. The tightness he had worn like armor was loosening. Later that day, a doctor called. Marcus listened in silence, jaw clenched. When the call ended, he set the phone down and closed his eyes. Naomi stood nearby, waiting. "They admitted it," Marcus said. "The obstruction should have been removed years ago." Naomi's shoulders slumped. Relief and anger collided. "So many days," she whispered. He was hurting for no reason. Marcus shook his head. There was a reason. Convenience. He knelt in front of her, an awkward, human movement that stunned her. "Thank you," he said, "for choosing him when everyone else chose comfort." Naomi swallowed. "I almost didn't, but you did." News traveled fast. Messages poured in. Marcus ignored them. He spent his time on the floor with Eli, sounding out words, letting his son interrupt, correct, and laugh. One evening, Eli sat between Marcus and Naomi, holding their hands. "Why didn't they help me?" he asked, suddenly serious. Marcus inhaled. "Sometimes adults make bad choices," he said. "Sometimes they don't listen." Ili furonet. "You listened." Marcus looked at Naomi. "We learned how," he said. The house changed. Rules softened. Doors stayed open. Music played in the afternoons. Naomi stopped feeling like a guest. Weeks later, Eli stood at the front door with a backpack. "School," he said, nervous and proud. Naomi crouched. "You'll be great. Will you come back?" "Every day," she promised. When the door closed, Marcus exhaled. "Thank you for staying," he said. "Thank you for letting me," Naomi replied. That night, Eli pressed his ear to Marcus's chest again. "It's still there," he said. "It always will be," Marcus answered. Naomi watched, thinking of how close she had come to walking away. Courage, she realized, was not loud. It was deciding to stay. As life moved forward, the story spread beyond the estate. People argued about blame and systems. Naomi ignored it. She focused on Eli's voice growing stronger each day. One afternoon, Marcus stood before the staff. "If you see something," he said, "say something." His gaze settled on Naomi. "Care matters here." Eli ran in, breathless. "I can hear the rain." They all paused, listening. It was soft, steady, ordinary. Naomi smiled. "If this story moved you, if you believe small choices can change lives, take a moment now. Like this video, so more people can find it. And if you want to hear more stories where courage comes from unexpected places, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach someone who needs them. Finally, share your thoughts below. Tell us what you would have done in Naomi's place, and whether you believe listening can be its own kind of miracle. Eli laughed as thunder rolled in the distance. Marcus closed his eyes. Naomi stayed. The sound remained. Hope did too. The next morning arrived bright, rinsed clean by rain. Eli sat at the table, sounding out labels on cereal boxes, mispronouncing half of them and laughing at himself. Naomi corrected gently, careful not to rush. Marcus watched the patience unfold. "I spent years forcing answers," he said quietly. "Turns out time was part of it." Naomi nodded. "Listening takes time." At the gate, a reporter waited. Marcus shook his head and walked past. "No interviews," he said. "Just living." "Ele doet nong is asleep. Can we hear music today?" She smiled. "Pick something." The notes filled the room, imperfect and loud. Eli swayed, eyes closed, learning joy without fear. Marcus felt something heal that had never been diagnosed. Outside, life continued, unaware of the small miracle inside. Naomi understood then that staying would always be her bravest choice. If you stayed until the end, thank you for listening. Stories like this survive because you do. Remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need hope today. And before you go, leave a comment telling us the moment that stayed with you. Your voice matters here. Eli leaned into Naomi, listening to the music fade. Marcus smiled. The house breathed. Silence no longer ruled. Sound did. It was enough. Tomorrow would bring challenges, adjustments, and moments of doubt. But the choice to notice, to listen, and to act would remain. Naomi knew that. Marcus knew it now, too. Eli simply lived it, one sound at a time, teaching them all how healing actually works quietly, bravely, together without applause. Thanks for being part of this journey. Stay kind, stay curious, and keep listening for the small truths that change everything. We'll see you in the next story, where another ordinary moment becomes extraordinary because someone chose to care. Until then, take care of each other.